Now, your host, Ken Broo, on Newsradio 700 WLW.
Well, all over America, there's great debate as to whether or not the United States did the right thing. In particular, Donald Trump did the right thing, whether the president did the right thing in taking out the top Iranian general responsible for decades of violence and murders, most of which came at the hands of those that like to live free, breathe free, and die free. But there's no question about it. It has touched off a fuse in that part of the country. And now Iran is vowing retaliation against America. Last night there was a follow-up attack, another attack in that area of the world. And it makes you wonder exactly what the game plan is here for the United States. Why now? And was intelligence that good from the various factions in the United States, the CIA and other people, various assets that we have in that area of the country? Was it that good that we had to act right now and do this? The Democrats don't like it. Of course, they don't like anything Donald Trump does. Donald Trump could hand Chuck Schumer a cure for cancer, and Schumer would yell at Trump because he didn't consult with Schumer before Trump did the research. I mean, it's all politicized. So you've got to wade through all of that BS and try and figure out exactly where the truth lies. Someone who knows where the truth lies because he's been there. He is a Navy SEAL. He is someone who trained Navy SEALs, and he's a good guest to this program, and he's a good Ohio boy. He is Lieutenant Jason J. Redman, and he's standing by right now on the AcuteHearingCenters.com hotline. And Lieutenant Redman, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
Outstanding, man. It's great to be here. Just got back from vacation yesterday, and obviously watching hot and heavy all the both sides of the debate, which is always interesting.
It is, because there's so much BS. It's Washington, D.C. If you lit Washington, D.C. on fire, it would incinerate in 10 seconds, because most of what it's built on is BS. But be that as it may, is there any question in your mind that the powers that be in this country, Donald Trump, those that offer him the intelligence to do things like this, the Secretary of Defense, is there any doubt in your mind that they had enough intelligence to go for this, knowing that if they didn't, there might be something that would be really bad waiting for the United States down the road?
Absolutely no doubt in my mind. As a matter of fact, it's a lot of people, and there's been a lot of debate going on in the national media. I've heard individuals that try and say, oh, we caused this. I mean, that's such BS. I mean, Soleimani has been a staunch enemy of the United States for decades. I mean, all the way back to the Beirut bombing, he played a part in that, and it is carried forward for decades. He is probably one of the most influential military commanders Iran had, and he has waged his own war and Iran indirectly against the United States for decades. I lost friends in Iraq in 2007 due to a very insidious Iranian device called a EFP, which was an IED that was specifically designed for one purpose, and that purpose was to penetrate U.S. armored vehicles. And members of my own team, 3 members of my own team, were killed in 2007 due to one of these IED setups. So, indirectly, straight from Soleimani. And this guy has just waged this war. For years, Iran has basically been waging this proxy war, using terrorism and other paramilitary factions to basically go after U.S. interests. A lot of things you're not seeing in the news is Soleimani was directly responsible for trying to execute an attack within D.C. several years ago that was thwarted by U.S. intelligence sources. So, they've just been getting more and more bold on their attacks on U.S. interests, on their attacks on actual U.S. soldiers. And, basically I think this administration, and rightfully so, has finally said enough is enough.
I think Lieutenant, I think there are a lot of people that want to play checkers. He's playing chess. They want to bring a P-gun. He's got what you said, IEDs that are designed strictly for penetrating armor and killing Americans. Unfortunately, the world changed. It's not necessarily countries that we fight. It's It's people that have a belief, a desire, a hatred, and these are factions of countries. And the game changed, and there's so many right now, A, that don't like Trump to begin with, so they're going to criticize him, but B, that just don't understand that this whole thing changed, and it changed about 25 years ago, maybe before that, back in the early 90s. It just changed, and you have to be proactive, and if you're not, you're going to get blown up. I mean, look at 9/11. We got it hard on 9/11, right? Well, do we want that again? Is it like that schoolyard philosophy? Well, don't hit anybody, but if you hit them, if they hit you, you hit them back. It doesn't work that way anymore.
It doesn't. And I think that's really, a lot of people say, why now? Well, we've watched Iran, and specifically Soleimani and his attacks throughout the past several decades, just get more and more bold in what they're doing. So obviously the attack on December 27th against the rocket attack on the base on December 27th that killed a U.S. contractor. From there you see the bold attack on the U.S. embassy. And then I think, the intelligence sources said, hey, there is another pending attack, and this one could be big. It could potentially cost us dozens of lives, if not hundreds of lives. And I think, the Secretary of Defense and Secretary Pompeo, the Secretary of State, they looked at all of this. They looked at the risks to Americans, and they said, hey, this guy is a direct threat. And a lot of times people don't understand, when you are targeting an individual at that level, there are very, very, very small windows. And those windows very rarely ever come up. So when those opportunities arise, there is not time to pull together all of Congress and say, hey, guys, we have this window. We're talking hours and sometimes only minutes, like minutes windows that we have to execute.
No, and you know what, Lieutenant? I was just going to say, you dropped out there for a second. Where were all of these voices that who are condemning Trump now? Where were they when President Obama tracked down and killed Osama bin Laden? Where were they then? That was hailed as a great victory for America and all the things that he's done. Well, what about all the things this guy did? What's the difference between the two?
I personally don't think there is any difference. I mean, I would relate Soleimani to the same levels as bin Laden and al-Baghdadi. I mean, he operated in a manner that utilized terrorism, paramilitary forces, sabotage. I mean, you name it, this guy was willing to get into it and execute it against Americans. And they saw a window. They recommended President Trump. President Trump didn't have a whole lot of time, and he executed. And I tell you what, I think he actually made the right decision.
We're chatting with Lieutenant Jason J. Redman, retired Navy SEAL, taught Navy SEALs, injured in combat, and injured badly in combat, Ohio guy, back in Ohio on Ohio soil. You know what I'm hearing a lot of now today, and you're probably hearing it too, from people that don't believe that the president did the right thing. What's next? Well, what's going to happen next? Well, we did this. Now, what's our game plan? What's going to happen next? Do the people who are saying what's next honestly believe that the president and his Secretary of Defense and the CIA or whoever else is involved in this thing, do they honestly believe they haven't prepared for what's next? I mean, it's almost like we have nothing else to say, so we'll say what's next. I mean, the absurdity of what's coming out of people's mouths here, Lieutenant, in the last 48 hours is astounding, is it not?
I agree. I mean, you would be amazed. It filters all the way down to friends of my kids. So these are teenagers who are like, oh, my God, I'm going to be drafted into this World War III. And it's fascinating to me because I watch a lot of people on the left are fueling this rhetoric that this president has now placed us into a new war. I got bad news for the American people. Iran has been at war with us for decades. They hate us. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you watch their rhetoric, their top military commander, basically their chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has been waging a war everywhere he gets a chance to against American interests and against direct Americans. We attribute over 600 American deaths in Iraq due to the Iranian influence and the paramilitary units that are working there. So, all this rhetoric that it's going to take us into a war, Iran's been at war with us for decades. Yeah. Now, where does that take us? Iran does not have the military force to try and go at us head on. So what's going to happen is they're going to try and continue this strategy of what they've been doing before. Will they try and ramp it up? I imagine they will. But this is exactly, it's not an overnight decision to send troops overseas. That happened probably weeks ago that they were prepping these different thousands of units or thousands of forces that are going to go overseas to buffer up our defensive posture in some of these other areas against, what's probably going to be an uptick in what Iran tries to pull off, if anything. Because the other thing that could happen, Ken, it's the reality. You have to understand, the Middle East is really big on saber rattling and on thumping their chest and putting out a lot of incendiary rhetoric. But I guarantee you right now, the Iranian leadership is stepping back and going, holy smoke, Did this just happen? Did the U.S. just step up and kill our top general?
Yeah.
Do we really want to step into this? Because obviously they just showed for decades we've gone unchecked. And suddenly we just said check to them. What do so, there is a little bit of a reality check that's happening in Iran right now, and they're having to question, well, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Because they're going to put all that rhetoric out there. It's what they do. If you go back to the war, if you remember Saddam Hussein, when we first started attacking, he made all kinds of rhetoric about how he was going to burn the U.S. to the ground and all this stuff. And then we swept through Iraq like poop through a goose.
Mm-hmm. No, it was. It was that was, if I recall, that was over in about a week. And then, of course, we were prepared for the war. We weren't prepared for the peace. And therein lies what politicians do worst, and that is try and figure out what happens after you win a victory militarily. But be that as it...
And here's...
Go ahead.
And here's a great point about that, Ken. I love that you brought that up. So we swept through Iraq in about a week, and then we got drawn into a very violent, basically civil war that was going on between the Sunnis and the Shias. And who was driving that civil war? Iran. Iran was creating all kinds of dissent, fomenting all kinds of basically dissent within Iran and within the Shia population. Within Iraq, that created this messy insurgency and civil war that occurred within that area, which really is what created such a bad atmosphere there over the next, 7 or 8 years while we were there.
Well, I hope the rhetoric dies down on this. Lieutenant, I remember a time when politics stopped at the ocean, and the president's word was the president's word, and the nation stood as one when there was something going on in another country militarily. Not anymore. This is a new ball game too politically. I just hope some of these people that are so quick to try and make hay with this just sit back, shut up, and not look stupid 2 or 3 weeks down the road when this thing may have been something really big that prevented something really big. But, I guess it's human nature anymore, Lieutenant. People got a mouth and they want to use it. They used to have 2 ears and a mouth and kind of figured that's the way you're supposed to use it, 2 to 1, but not anymore, just not anymore. And it's really sad, but I'll tell you what, I hope the good soldiers that are over there fighting that, and they will be fighting this in one way, shape, or form, either through goodwill or perhaps through just some sort of support over there. And I hope they realize that the majority of the country is behind them on this thing.
Oh, I think they absolutely do. And I think, the members of our intelligence community and the members of the Department of Defense are warriors. They've seen it. We've been watching this threat for decades. We dealt with this threat when I was in Iraq. We saw it in Afghanistan. We know that the Iranians have been trying to destabilize everything in that region with their focus on destabilizing the government of Iraq, obviously targeting American forces. So I think what people oftentimes don't understand is sometimes we have to endure a little bit of short-term pain for the long-term gain. And I think for decades we've had to tolerate Iran trying to destabilize a lot of things going on in the Middle East and specifically target us. And I think the leadership of our country finally said enough is enough. We're not going to allow this to happen. We're not going to allow, the threat to our American citizens to continue to grow by Iran. And I think in the long run, it's going to be a positive thing for the first time they've been checked.
Well, Lieutenant Redman, we salute you once again. It's great to have you back in Ohio, and we'll visit, I'm sure, down the road. But on this day, we welcome you back, and we'll catch up down the road. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
We've had problems with Iran that go back almost 70 years. Again, read your history books, please. 1953, the CIA helped oust Iran's democratically led leader, Guy by the name of Mohammed Mossadegh, he wanted to retain control over Iran's oil reserves and installed his replacement, a pro-Western guy named the Shah. Remember the Shah? Remember all that? And we're going it alone this time. You can't find a country that's slapping us on the back on this one except Israel. But for everybody that's out there thinking that, oh, well, this is just Trump. He just wants to divert attention from his impeachment. This is what this is all about. It's not. It's not. And what's next? Well, believe me, don't believe me. You have to believe that the people that pulled this thing off have thought about what's next. You don't just do something and say, that's it, we'll see what happens now. Not in this kind of game. So, yeah, they thought about what's next. Seems to me, though, the people that are talking the loudest about this are the people who have appeased Iran historically. These are the people that gave Iran that pallet of cash and said, here, take it. No, I just don't bother. Oh, no, please don't do what you're doing anyway. Just take it. So my guess is the debate about this will rage on. Congress is back in town next week, and this will be political hay as always. Everything is political hay. It is tiresome.